Welcome to the Kim Barrett Show. I am your host, Kim Barrett, and on today's episode, we have Mr. Jordan Levy from CapSource. Now, if you're a business owner who deals with multiple stakeholders and you're trying to build up an audience, a community, a group of people that you are interacting with, and you want to know how to do it and which order to do it in, whose priority should you put first when it comes to your stakeholders, how can you raise capital, how can you crack into new markets, you will not want to miss this episode. So if you're a business owner and you tick those boxes, make sure you check that out. And of course, if you need help getting in front of more people, head over to marketingmogul.com.au where we have got your back. But until then, let's jump into the show. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you making the time.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolute pleasure. Now, I always like to start off the podcast the same question every time, which is, Jordan, if I met you and we're out at a party and I said, what is it that you actually do? What's your go-to answer?
Well, it's a good question. I think we make it exciting to learn and meaningful. And I think there's a lot of players involved in our model, but I think it's just not as useful, to learn out of textbooks as it is to learn from people, from mentors out there in the real world that are doing it. And, we're trying to help inspire the next generation and connect them with real businesses and real leaders of those organizations.
Why did you choose to go down that path? Because obviously some people could just be like, look, there's decent educators out there. There's people that are doing a decent job of things. Like, what was it that kind of sparked the interest for you to want to dive down that path and make it easier and more accessible for people?
First, I was like, I wanted to see it. I wanted to see it happen. I wanted to poke it. I wanted to find the people who did it. I think that was one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from, my entrepreneurship professor. But he's like, you have to be obsessed with your customer and the change you're trying to make in the world. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't get enough of those classes growing up, in college. And, I wanted to be someone who graduated with 10 internships because I had so much of a clue of what I wanted to do that I chose the best thing for me because they also felt it was the best thing for me. And I had chances to try other things. I got into, the accounting major because of some advice from a guy in my fraternity who was a little older than me, who was going through the ropes. And he was like, okay, this is what I learned. You should do finance after you declare accounting, because that's the way you get the best job out of Lehigh. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And then as I got older, I was like, I have no experience in anything but being a camp counselor and a bartender. How am I supposed to be a business person if I've never worked at, I did a KPMG internship and it just wasn't right for me. I knew it. And I was like, if I had 10 of these experiences, then I would know the perfect thing for me. And so I basically created a career out of figuring that out for other people.
Nice. And so at what point did that happen? Obviously you went through the internships or the internship there and finding that out. When did you make the decision that you're like, I want to help other people with this as well?
When I was a college senior, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do because I realized that the last thing I wanted was to go take the CPA and then start working full-time at KPMG in New York City on, it was like a transactions group. And I was just like, I just didn't have a good experience there. It was really cool work, but I didn't like the whole big firm feel. I didn't like the work I didn't want to be buried in Excel all day. I was too creative for that. And I was like, wait, so why didn't I know this before I committed to this? Right. And so I basically was like, I just want to figure out how to make that a better experience for students and just more accessible. I think, you can't provide all those experiences to everyone. That's why we build software, right? We want to actually help everyone coordinate these types of experiences. So we really sell enterprise software. And then we actually use our own software to build programs to show that it really works. And then we just start packing up those features and say, hey, now you could do this too. And I think that's been a really cool experience for us because, it forces us to be our own customer, right? I almost look at the sales team at my organization as the customer of the product team, right? And they have to make us, successful. We have to make our customers successful.
I love that. Yeah, you always want to make sure that your customers are successful after using and enjoying your product, right? So that's always a big win, and I think a big focus that sometimes people, it seems like they forget a little bit. But tell us unpack a little bit more. So if someone comes to you, like, what's the actual like process that they go through? How does it all work for them?
So there's two stakeholders that pay us and one very important stakeholder that doesn't. So the two stakeholders that are bought into CapSource are industry and academic partners. And they are involved because of a very different aspect of the engagement, which is experiential learning if you're a student, and experiential hiring if you're a company. Why does an organization want to get involved in, a project with students in a classroom or building an internship program? It's because they want to hire the best talent and they want to connect with the next generation. So it's a cycle, and we provide technology to both sides that they can connect and customize their experience and ultimately build value for their organization. So universities can build experiential learning programs that connect with companies, hopefully monetize those companies in the future. And then the companies can connect with talent. And that very important stakeholder that gets it for free is the students, because ultimately that's our primary beneficiary. Except we all know there's a huge, economic crisis in the US with like college debt and students taking on way too much. Look, it's the responsibility of society, which means it's really the responsibility of businesses who are trying to target these people as customers and as employees to train the next generation, to engage them, to connect with them in a way that, results in value for them and for themselves.
Mm. Can you I don't know if it's going to be easy, if this is an easy question to answer, but can you walk us through one of those, do you have any example experiences? Like if a student is studying, what's kind of put in front of them, and then what do they undertake? And then what does that kind of end up getting them?
Yeah. So a really cool experience that comes to mind for me is we do a live case competition that we've been doing for many years. And it's with a partner organization in the US that accredits business schools. And they want to basically provide all their schools with an opportunity to get their students involved in something that helps the students learn about the business world and ultimately can help them get hired. And so last year, we gave the students a challenge. There's a company called CoinSource. They're actually in the midst of doing their second version of this with us because it was so successful the first time. They basically asked groups of students from all over the world, hey, we're trying to go from B2C to B2B. We want to build an enterprise platform for Bitcoin ATMs and basically sell them to 7-Eleven so that 7-Eleven can have ATMs in all their stores. And then we want to go to BlackRock and sell it to BlackRock too, so that you can have BlackRock Bitcoin, right? And so that was their concept. Students know, some students know a lot about Bitcoin, others know nothing, and they can all come into the situation, pour their heart into building a final deliverable. And literally the top 10% of people in that program got hired by the company and still work there today and are actually selling and building new products. And it's amazing because the companies use this as a tool to vet talent and to help the talent learn about what's really out there and if they can really add value.
That's awesome. And I suppose then as well, even if you weren't successful as the top 10% or one of the winning ones, you still have that on your resume and CV being hey, I was a part of this program. This is what we focused on and did. That's really cool. I think that's really exciting. I went to university and studied here, and I was that would definitely engage me and interest me if there's something like that popped up. Australia's probably a bit behind. You probably need to come and do some more stuff in Australia, man. I think we're a bit behind you guys over in the US from that engagement perspective. That's awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I hope so. I definitely would be, interested in working with Australian schools. I love the system, the academic system. They're a key stakeholder in this too, because they want to train those students who end up being, those really impactful, future leaders, right? That's what the university system is so good at getting the students in, but then really drops the ball on actually preparing them for tomorrow. And I think that's what we do well, because you're basically connecting them with the people building tomorrow. And you're saying, hey, that's part of our learning experience. It's not the whole thing. And I think one other thing you mentioned that kind of resonated with me is the resume, right? It's what experience that the students can reference. And that's actually what we call it, is reference-worthy experience for the young professionals, right? They're actually you need to add stuff to your resume that you can talk about, right? And sometimes a bartender or a camp counselor is not going to cut it. Like, yeah, you can show that you have organizational skills and that you can work as a team and that you're a good caretaker. But like sometimes people want to know, like, do you know how to write code and like solve a problem for, a technology team? Or do you know how to build a financial model that's going to work for my stakeholders, or analyze data and build a dashboard, right? And those are the types of projects that come to us. And then the students walk away with literally something that they can add to their resume, reference-worthy experience.
Yeah, because I know even myself, like I went to university, and even though I worked full-time, so I worked full-time in an accounting firm while I was studying at university, and I went for a lot of these like entry level, and well, in Australia they're called graduate level positions. And they're like, oh, cool. Like, yes, you've got work experience, but it's not directly correlating to the industry. And we didn't really have anything else. So they're like, because there was, say, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people graduating with similar degrees at the same time. They're like, oh, we can't take you. And I'm like, but this is an entry level position. How am I supposed to get, like, what do you want from me? How am I going to give you something else? Like, what can I do? I mean, for me, it was probably a blessing because now I run my own company because I had to, because I didn't get to go into any of the cool companies that I thought I was going to work for, because it was so hard. So I can understand, especially from not only from the company's position, but from the student's position as well. It's hard to make yourself stand out. So these things, it just sounds like it's a really powerful tool for them to be able to kind of utilize.
40% of US entry-level jobs require 3 years of work experience.
So this one, I was like, how could you call that entry level? Like, it's meant to be the point where you enter. Oh gosh,
that's the thing that always shocked me. I actually recently found that statistic because we've been selling to schools and getting students on our platform for a long time, but we actually never really packaged up the opportunity for companies to get involved and pay for some value. And that's something that's new for us because we built the foundation on trying to learn, how do you build these programs successfully? What do you look for, right? As an educator, as a student, how are you successful? What are you looking for at the end of that experience? And, a lot of times it's just recognition for work that was done well and opportunities to improve, coaching, right? I think that's what students really want. And then, connections to real people that can make a difference in their lives. And I think that it's really cool to see, some of the students that actually get jobs out of, these CapSource projects. They're just doing a classroom project. And then the company comes by and says, hey, I think you're so smart, I want to hire you. Like, I think that's the most serendipitous, like, amazing thing that you can create as a platform, is some small influence on a person's life that changes it forever.
And purely because I'm big on the marketing side of things and the sales process side of things. What's been your process? Because obviously it's now, by the sounds of it, so you've got a lot of cool companies coming to work with you, a lot of schools jumping on board because of the results that you've got now. But like in the early days, how did you go about attracting companies so they could come in? How did you go about attracting the schools and going, hey, like, you need this? Because I can imagine at the beginning, my experience with schools and universities and whatnot has always been where they're like, well, this is how we've always done it, so that's how we're always going to do it. And it might just be more an Australian thing. But like, how did you kind of break through that and then go, hey, no, like, this is what you need to bring on board? And then to companies like, hey, like, this is like, what was your process of marketing to those two different stakeholders?
So I think the key thing is that you have to, if you're building a marketplace, you need it to give it away for free to some of your stakeholders, or else it's impossible to get like all of them to sign up at the same time. And one thing is like, you go back to a simple platform. Uber is a simple platform. There's really two sides, and then there's Uber, right? And so you're either a driver or you're someone who takes rides, right? Or technically you could be both. You have a very different user interface if you're logged into one or the other. But like, you technically have two user roles, and you just need to, like, they're the market maker for those two. Like CapSource's system, we have three, right? We have schools that want to build these programs. We have students that are going through those programs, and then companies look at those students as candidates. They're like, it's a totally different user role. So I think for us, I think what will prove to be what makes or breaks CapSource and results in us, being able to grow the business is, can we take that three-sided marketplace, start just by monetizing the schools? They're way less resourced. They're also way more difficult to work with than companies. They expect far more and pay a lot less. But can we leverage the success that we created there, because we really built the platform with a foundation for the schools, and then we attracted companies, and the companies are interested in what we're building and want to get more involved now. And because of that, now there's an opportunity to say, okay, we actually came up with a few tools that you could use that are going to result in outcomes that you care about as opposed to the school. And so that's what we're doing now. It's very difficult to build a three-sided marketplace. A, it's B, it's very difficult to monetize even one of those three sides successfully. And then C, now to monetize a second side while you're still effectively serving the first side is something yet to be seen as, successful for us, but it's what we're working on. It's like, can we actually grow our enterprise like that and really just get like more power users using features in depth?
I think that's so important, as you say there, because some people might hear that and they've got an idea or they're looking to enter a marketplace and they're like, oh, cool, yeah. Like, I'm just going to make sales to both these guys at the same time, get on all these users. And it's like, well, you've got to do one thing well and then add on to those other avenues. Can you remember back to the first like school that you got on board? How did that go about? Like, what was like the first couple of schools getting on board? How did that work for you?
So we went after capstone programs because it's the closest model to actually what we wanted to replicate, right? We said, okay, so these students are students, right? They're in an MBA program. It was Fordham University at the time. And then we shortly after brought on Maryland. And so both of those schools had a very similar problem. It wasn't exactly the same. And that's what makes some of our systems so unique is like it technically can serve both of those needs. So at Maryland, they needed help building class projects, right? 30 students, a professor working with a company. What does that look like? And then basically turning that into technology is what we did. All the while, Fordham said, hey, we want to find one project for all of our MBA students in small teams. And they want to work hand in hand with the company. And the educators are kind of just like monitoring and providing advice, but they're not really involved as much as a class project like our live case. And so those were our first two MVPs of the product was, okay, we need to figure out how to build that. We need to figure out how to track the process after they're built to make sure it goes well. And then we need to be able to for that to be valuable enough for the students and for the educators that are involved in those programs so that they come back to us. We didn't really care as much about the companies, although the first company I ever got to work with us has done 6 more projects since we started. So wow. He was an early adopter and he's still a power user. And, that goes to show like if he's still actually a free customer. He only does our class projects, right? And we actually are starting to charge now for, enterprise software and custom internship programs that you manage through our software. And so it's interesting because there's not really a lot of players doing that. I don't know any companies that are really doing like internship program management. And it's very complementary because it's exactly the same tools that we already offer our schools and their educators. So for us, it's just like, okay, packing up features and making them available for different user types and being fearless in terms of getting feedback and iterating, because that's another thing you asked earlier, what's the best piece of advice? So other than not charging both sides of the marketplace, you have to be scrappy with the technology, because if you are so committed to one, you can't change it that easily. And then you can't actually validate that what you're trying to do actually will scale. And so that's one thing we've been on WordPress ever since we started. And I think it's a great way to validate your assumptions and start to get traction. And then, then you dream up something big and bold. But like, once you build 8 apps on a mobile app that you're selling through the Apple App Store, you can't actually just push out new screens that easily and add new features without really getting approval from them. So it's just like, start with like a micro version of the experience that you could just manually see what happens. And then after that, go at it and have a good time and build it in whatever language and framework you want.
Yeah, that's so important. Like for so many of our clients as well, it's just the biggest thing that I try and drill into them is that you need to get that MVP, you need to get that beta test out there, you need to get like that first runs on the board before you go and commit to doing all this crazy stuff. So, before you go and commit to building all this custom, completely done things, it's like, cool, just get it out there. Make sure that the people want it. Make sure that it's like, your hypothesis is validated before you go and commit, all this crazy amount of resources to doing something. So it's good to hear that you're on the same side of things there. So going forward this year and onwards, like what are some of the goals and projects for you guys going forward?
Yeah, so I think we're in the midst now of validating our product for industry partners. Our big goal is to turn into an enterprise software company like Salesforce, but for learning and hiring that is all about experiential, right? It's like, okay, I want to engage new talent. I want them, to be able to experience some of the business and meet some people, and then I want to hire them. And then the schools are trying to build their own version of that experience. And we want to just provide the tool set to make that possible. And so far, it's been really amazing how, we're working with Brickfields Asia College and a consortium of schools in Malaysia, and they're trying to get people back to work. That's the domain that they went with, BAC2 work. And that's just what we're doing with them. And they're using certain features in a certain way, and it all nicely rolls back up to our main ecosystem, which is learning and hiring, right? Like that's the main outcome that we're trying to drive. And we're just trying to say, okay, we can do it well for schools. We're doing it right now for Notre Dame and University of Montana. And so all of these schools are saying, okay, we want to do more of this learning and hiring business. How do we do it? Right. And we want to make it more intuitive. We want to get more of those software customers on from the school side. And then we want to build, an equally valuable and powerful tool set for the industry partners. That's our big goal. And I think another thing that we're doing this year is raising money. We're completely bootstrapped to date, funded based on revenue from clients. Have grown those clients over many, many moons and many, many long nights, but truly like such a growth experience for me. I think that's one of my favorite quotes I like to say is education is about chasing curiosity and entrepreneurship is about monetizing. So it means you really get to like chase down, what you're curious about to the point where you're making money.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that quote. And as we get towards the end of our time here together, I always like to ask the same question as we get towards the end, which is there a question that I didn't ask you that I should have?
I don't, that's always such an interesting question because like, I think we've had such a good chat. And I guess, my question, that I would love to ask the audience, right, that's listening to this is like, how does the Australian system work and fit into this, right? Like that's something that of course I think that humans, right? I totally do not look at people as ethnic, racial, sex, like all those things don't matter. We're all learners. We're all just hungry and curious, and we need Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So you cannot be intellectually stimulated if you don't have a house, roof over your head, food in your tummy, clean water. Like those things are important things, like no doubt about it. The next order of business is, okay, how do we make this global society of humans the most connected and effective as possible? And I think, how does Australia fit into that? How does CapSource fit into Australia as they're fitting into that? I think that's what I'd be curious to learn. I don't know the answer to that. I'm having a great time figuring out in the US, but as I mentioned earlier, like as soon as we kind of talk to people from overseas, they have the same problems. Malaysian young professionals and Malaysian companies. We're working with an organization called International Study Programs in Prague that wants to put, trips together for students and include projects with companies. So they're using our system for that purpose. And they work with companies all over the globe. So it's just like, this problem for as long as you're, Homo sapien and you're breathing and curious, I think we can help kind of satiate and potentially even provide more hunger, right? Provide more of an opportunity to dive deeper. And I'm just interested to see how we might be able to work with, folks in Australia that are interested and continue to grow around the world.
I'm sure there's a huge need. Like it's been a few years since I've been out of uni now, but I know when I was there, I was like, it would definitely everything that you shared today would have been like, I would have been all over that as a student, and I could see the benefit for everyone involved. So I might still have some old uni contacts with the alumni associations. I'll see if I can get any contact details for you and connect you up. But if people have been listening to that and maybe there's someone that actually has a really good answer to that question, better than me, or someone that wants to know more about what you guys are up to, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
So our website is capsource.io. So there's literally a button to schedule a meeting. You'll be able to meet directly with our team if you want a demo of the software, you want to see some examples of our experiences that we build. So we're happy to do that. Otherwise, feel free to poke around. We also very active on LinkedIn. If you search Jordan Levy, hopefully you don't need the word CapSource, but it should come up. Then feel free to connect with me and we can chat and talk about examples or maybe scheduling some time. And then I would say, other than that, my email is Jordan at CapSource.io. So feel free to just shoot me an email. I'm happy to, take a read and get you in touch with the right people, or take a call directly if, that's the right, use of time for both of us. So I appreciate the opportunity to share what we're doing, with you and your audience. It means a lot to me.
Absolute pleasure. It's been great having a chat and finding out what you're up to, and it's definitely got me curious on a lot of things. So, guys, if you're listening to this, please make sure share it with someone. If there's someone maybe that's in that space, or is maybe there's someone that that's a student or at uni, or works with a uni, and you want to get them some insights as to what's happening, because I think Australia, for a lot of things, it's like whilst we do well in a lot of areas, a lot of the space when it comes to tech, I think is like we're not really being incentivized enough to do that over here. Australia's big on mining and exports and things like that, but I think it would definitely help out the whole of the country to get more into the spaces like this for improving not only our education, but obviously adopting new technologies as well. So, guys, if you know anyone, please share this episode around. Make sure that you subscribe as well, so that you can hear from more people that are amazing, just like Jordan. And Jordan, again, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you making the time.
Thanks, Kim. This has been great. I'm looking forward to getting down under soon.
See you soon. Cheers.